Here we go, we're live now, we're live. Now this was Easterbrooks Farm. I expect some people have seen this anyhow, all together, Easterbrooks Farm. These were the old buildings that were in where this chapel is now, just up against the edge of it. These were the old buildings behind the farm. I'm whipping through these because some of them I don't know. There's the big farmhouse that was just there now. It was all boarded up for a few years and then they started building and away we go. Now, this chapel started in the early 1970s, 1971 really, because it opened in, as we know, in 1972. I put them there, busy area. Look at all the cars there, look. No double yellow lines then, was it? Edward Rowe was the main contractor for this chapel. This is the official opening. Saturday the 2nd of December. Door to be unlocked by Mr. Paul Bartlett Lang, because I've already put this on today, so I'm just reading that. Plaque to be unveiled by Mr. John Coombe. 2nd of December. There we are, look, that's a lovely photo. Opened in 1972, as we said. Now, anybody know where that one was? That's Copperhouse Chapel, that's right. Now that was built in 1820. 1820. And it was, anyway, eventually when they closed it down, J&F Pools took it over until the 1980s. But that was built, say, in 1820. Here we are, look. Was that all on video? I put this one in because Jimmy Simons' shop is there. Remember the old Jimmy Simons, the lovely, you know, the tailor shop down there. And the shoes. Here we go. Now this is when this chapel closed, look. Sunday the 26th of November. And this opened on the 2nd of December. So it was only closed there for 1 week. Of course, that's what happened to it eventually. This was part of J&F Pools. This is when number 1 works, which you'll see in a minute, anyhow, got all taken down, and that was what was left of Copperhouse Chapel. Now, this is the first chapel. Come in, anybody seen this one? This is built of Scoria block. This was approximately 1775, because the Cornish Copper Company come into Hale in 1756. They were up Camborne, and they needed to come down here because of the water and bring all the stuff in from the mines and on the boats, etc. So the Cornish Copper Company, they were 1756 until about 1817, and then they found an open cast mine up in Wales called Paris. And so they moved everything from Copperhouse up there. But they carried on as the Cornish Copper Company, kept the name till 1867. And then they went bust, and of course Harvest bought them out. If you know where the chip shop is up in Copperhouse, yeah, you've got to imagine there was 25 furnaces up there working, smelting copper. And the average age for the people that worked up there, the average age was 30. What they didn't realise, as they were smelting all the copper, it was killing them. Nothing could grow. Everything was just being poisoned. So that was, and we all know about Luke's Copper Terrace, yes, because they started building. Mr. Luke, he went over to South Africa in the diamond mines, made himself a lot of money. When he come over in the 1900s, he had Luke's Copper Terrace built, a whole lot built. That's where the furnaces were. You can imagine that where the furnaces were. And then he had Beatrice Terrace named after his daughter, so he had that lot built as well. Now look, this is, oh, I've got to go back to that one. This was to say the chapel. John Wesley preached in there. Now, this was where the Dune shop is, up on the corner where Robin Phillips' butchers. This is where this was built. It was built as Scoria block, as I said, which is the waste, which you see all the black blocks. And that would last for 1,000 years. But they demolished that in 1820, and then they built the other chapel you just saw earlier on. And this, which is Philip Church Hall, again, this was built in the 1770s, maybe 1779. This was the Sunday school for the children that went to the chapel. Now we know that, and I don't know whether it's on there now or no. It says 1913 on there, but that's just a facade on the front. That's nothing to do with the actual building, not at all. That's all to do with the Copper Cornish Company. Now, Pratt's Market. Here we go. But this was a chapel. This was built in 1842. I helped to build that, you know. And then it closed, I think, in the 1960s, something like that, because Pratt's was, you know. Now we know it's flats. Now this is before the War Memorial. And of course, the War Memorial was put there in March 1921. That's being dedicated there. And if you look across, you're now up by where, say, Pratt's Market is, you're looking down the road. Look, there's no houses across the way. All them houses, they call them 1930s, don't they? Just up from Passmore Edwards. There was no houses there then, look. So they was building in the 1930s, so I don't know what we're worried about now. Building a few houses in Hale. St Alwyn's Church, 1888 that was completed. Now, you see there, that's their little room that's in the front. That wasn't built in 1888. That was completed in 1906. Okay, and you look there, there's the old houses there. There's East Terrace up there. Now I put this in, this is a bit of a, well, if anybody knows where we took down where Pat lived there now, there's St Alwyn's Church. Now there's no building in the front, so we know it's before 1906, and that was built in 1888. If you go up on the green in Bayview, have you ever noticed it dips down? Now, I sent this off to the council because I was a lady over there, but look at that, look. Now that don't tell lies. There's the houses up there, and of course Bayview is just there. But in the 1800s was a building. To me it was a mine, end of the mine house. But you know, I sent it to the council and said, why is the ground sinking? Because we got photos on, but I won't go into detail. Photos where that field was dead flat. Now he's put 20 feet down. Now, whoever go into, when you come to Hale Old Cornwall and you feel a bit dizzy, that's because the tide's coming in. There's a Roman Catholic church there. Now, this wasn't filled in until 1911. This was all part of the river. Passmore Edwards. What a fantastic building. They started laying the stone for that in 1893. And they completed it in 1896. Now we know Passmore Edwards was born in Blackwater, because that's where the first Passmore Edwards building is. But his mother and father come down Hale live. There's a posh down here, see? And they come down Hale live, and they went over Philip to live. So when they're coming down Philip and going down through Foundry, going to Foundry, they see their boy there building this. So this is, believe it or not, it's what they say is the best building what Passmore Edwards built, because his mum and dad could come down and look at it. 1896. This cost £8,000 to build. Of course, he'd gone to London, and of course, you know, he worked in the paper industry. He made himself a very, very wealthy man. So that's Passmore Edwards. Now, this is up opposite the second, well, I call it the secondary school, comprehensive school now. There's a chapel there, look. And that was built in 1869. Demolished, of course, they put some houses there in the 1970s, 1980s. Benton League. 1879, so it's 1886. That one was completed. Benton League Chapel. Richard Trevithick, here we go, a bit of history now. Richard Trevithick, born 1771. His missus is Jane Arby, because Arba's come down with Hale in 1779. And of course, John Arby, he was born in 1730, he died in 1803. He had 4 sons and 4 daughters. Well, sadly, three of the sons died, and he only left one, Henry. So Henry was born in 1775, and he died in 1850. But anyhow, you got all that. But he married Jane Harvey. Oh, that's right, Jane Trevithick. Now, she was born in 1772. She lived till, and they got married in 1797, and she lived till 1868 at a place called Pencleaf, which is going up by the hospital. On the right is a little house called Pencleaf, or Peggy now, where's Peggy?
Oh, sure.
There we are. Where your son lives.
Yeah, Charlotte House.
That's Charlotte House now, but it was called Pencliff then. She lived till 1868, so she was 96 when she died. Of course, Richard gallivanted off over to South America in 1816 till 1827 because he thought he'd make his money. But he was a fantastic inventor. And you've got to imagine that he was, Henry Harvey was his brother-in-law. Of course, they had the foundry, as I said, down there. So he would say to his brother-in-law, I got someone here, want to do a Jan Lucre Day, what we call it, and he'd give him someone to make. And this was the beginning of it. Richard Henry invented the high-pressure steam car. That's the first car that went on the road 24th of December, 1801. That wouldn't pass MOT now. but we go on about ale. This was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. We talk about harvest, but we also got to involve the Cornish Copper Company and all the mines as well. So I'm only just going over it. I'm right yet for 3 hours. Anyhow, now look at this. 1845. The Dutch government, the Haarlemmer Lake. Anybody been to Schiphol Airport?
Yes.
Well, if you went there in 1846, he was 20 feet underwater. Because there was the Haarlemmer Lake. It was that big when they had storms, because Holland is so low, of course, with all the area around, they kept flooding all the towns. So the Dutch government come to England and said, we need a system of pumping it out. So they come to Harbours of Hale, because we were world renowned by then, Cornish Copper Company, and Perna Worthel. And now, this young man there is Jabez Bickle. He's buried in St. Earth now. Francis Harvey and Billy Gilbert. And you can tell who the boss is, look at their hats. But they designed this as 12 foot. Nobody's ever created anything again. You go in by the White Hart, look across where Booker's is. This is where they were cast. Now, they built ships to take this over by 1848. And they made 3 lots of systems for 3 pumping stations. The last one was called the Crucius. And they still pump it in 1931, the Crucius. The other 2 they abandoned eventually. But they created over 112 square miles of land. Incredible. They did it in 3.5 years, no working on Sundays. That's what they done. We estimate that at 25 tons. There. That was cast in the ground. Then they had to get it out. So that's what we talk about manpower. They never had no McSalvers then to do anything. Anyhow, I've got to tell you this little true story. My wife is going to smile now. So look here. All these things got to be bolted together. Right? Well, we went over there in 2018 with the late Mervyn Sullivan and Jan to see the Crucius. I'm just so fascinated by it. So we went over there and they don't have to talk different than what we talk. I didn't understand. But anyhow, we had a good 5-hour thing and all, and then we sat down and had a cup of tea. Then this lady come in and had this little box and presented me with a nut. And the nut come off one part of the machine. It was made in Hale in 1846. So I put it in my suitcase. Then when we got to the airport, my name was called out. You could see this on the radar, on the X-ray. So I had to go forward, and then I explained to this gentleman, who wasn't quite sure my language, I suppose, what this nut was all about. That anyhow, he turned around to everybody there, and he said, "One nut taking another nut home." And that is true. My wife will better be out on it. And when you've got to think of Harbours, they built 79 ships. Incredible, isn't it? biggest one was 4,000 tons. And the most, I say, important one of all was the SS, the Canubia, was a steam paddle ship that was it was built in 1857, and it was eventually sold to the Confederates for the American Civil War in 1861. So it was a gun runner and also supplying materials and food to the people down south. It was going for about nearly 3 years before it was captured, but built in Hale. Now the Colosseum. I put this one there because if you go by the White Hart, you put your back to the wall, of course. That was what was there. This was where you imagine when they're casting anything, you can't just load it on a ship and send it out to America or out to Africa because you've got to make sure that they machined it. Well, this was the big machine shop in Hale. This was here till 1984. Then the local council, Penwith Council, decided we'll bulldoze that down and we'll put houses there, so that's what's there now. And within them getting permission on the Thursday, 10 days later, that wasn't no more. That was gone. That's why the Hale Heritage was formed in 1985, and I've been there now as the, I don't forget what we're called now, we're always changing our name. But anyway, I've been there 10 years now. We're trying to preserve, like we are in a lot of places, and safeguard what our industrial heritage is. You know. So that's what it was there, 1984, that was gone. Foundry Chapel. Everywhere I had a chapel, you see. Now this one, 1845 this one was, till 1967. She's going to laugh, my sister now can laugh. Yeah, this is true story, right? My twin sister got married there in 1967, in August 67. I think the gentleman having the wedding and all, and he's seen all, because I'm one of 13, 10 boys and 3 girls. I think he just closed his eyes and thought, I can't take no more. So they shut the doors. Shirley was the next to last person to be married in there. And now it's a market. It's a lovely market, it really is. You know, and I think the building is absolutely fantastic. Now look at this, look. Down Foundry. The first railway station. Down in the Isis Gardens. 1837. That was put there. And it went all the way up the terrace, up King George V, by Marks and Sparks. Lucky he's gone now because Marks wouldn't have been built. And up Marks and Sparks, up in Garrick, and then went to all the mines in Camborne and Madrouse, and took goods up and brought material back to Hale Station there. That was 1837. And that wasn't demolished until 1948. Here we are, look, there. That's the same station. And it's called the Isis Gardens. People think, why is the Isis? Well, because the first lifeboat that come to Hale in 1864, I'm more certain that's right, but come from Oxford, was donated by the Oxford University, and it was called the Isis, and that's where it was kept. And when you see the post office there, look, there's the Heritage Centre now. It was Slade's as well. But you know the post office down Foundry? That was called Trelizic Smelting Works from 1805 till 1851. Trelizic, that was the smelt, not that building, but that's where they were smelting in there, right there, on the main road. They've had to widen the road a bit now because we've got 2 holiday members here. When I'm downtown sometimes walking the dog, and it's dead still, and people got the window down really frustrated. I just say, it'd be nice when the bypass is built. Now we're going up to St Michael's. I mean, there's tons to tell you really, but we could always do it another night anyhow. But St Michael's Hospital, right? We all love St Michael's Hospital, don't we? But this is the most important building. This is the Downs. That was built in 1880. For Mr. Rowlands, who was a manager for Harbours of Hale, right in there. Now, the Bird Paradise was built in 1862. Anyhow, a Miss Frances Ellis, come from London, and she bought that in the late 1890s. And then, this here ground here was called the Croft, then, and she said to the, I think I'm going to say the Daughters of the Liège is what they were called, the nuns that came to Hale. They took over, she signed that over to them on the condition she could live there the rest of her natural life with her sister. And that's what she did. She lived in the Downs. Now, St Michael's Hospital, they got permission to build it, and it was actually completed the week before the First World War. They had 10 beds, because they were going to have a big thing, but of course the First World War came in, so they didn't bother not. But they had 10 beds downstairs, down below, for people that didn't have a lot of money. And upstairs, they were, let's say, more private, so they could pay for them that was down below. But as we know, it carried on to, I think, 1970 or something, it was taken over altogether. Ellis Brewery, where brewery is right in the car park there, now Ellis Brewery. That come in to Hale in 1815. That supplied all the beer and everything for 50 establishments in the area, and they went bust, whatever you like to call it, in 1937. But Ellis Brewery actually built Canubio Hotel, built by the Ellis Brewery family. Isambard Kingdom Brunel, 1806 to 1859. And that's another thing I put there. You look at them chains there, look. They couldn't lift them up, could they? Not to, they had no cranes or nothing. But that was all, we talk about manpower. Now, this is we've got the bridge there, the Royal Albert Bridge. All these links that you see, if you go over when you're looking again, all these links, you must feel safe, I can't tell you. All these links were made by the Cornish Copper Company. Nothing to do with Arvis. Isambard Kingdom Brunel, that one there. Now he designed the first bridge down Foundry from 1852. The first bridge was a single carriage, just wood and poles, designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel. The bridge you've got there now is 1888, that one. Have you ever noticed how it's leaning a bit? I like to tell people coming down and visit me and Judy, get off Cameron and catch a bus. I'm telling you. It is leaning a little bit. That there centre span, that one there, believe it or not, you're looking at 1859 line. That was 80 feet down in the water for bedrock. They'd go down there, they wouldn't get on no diving suit. So they have neck up things. That's what engineering was all about. That centre span was 80 feet down. Now, 2nd of May it opened, of course. And they had a test train, they said the 11th of April. I wouldn't have gone on no test train over there. But as we know, Isambard Kingdom Brunel died in September 1859. And we talk about the Clifton Suspension Bridge, which a lot of the parts were made by the Cornish Copper Company. He went to Bristol and said, this gorge. And he said, nearly 20 odd years, nearly 30 years, saying he could design something and they wouldn't have it. Well, he died in 1859, and the Clifton Suspension Bridge was completed in 1864, so we never saw it. But he did, it was ships, the SS Great Eastern was the biggest one of all, was 18,000 tons. And he built that, the second one was Great Britain, and that was in 1843. And the Western was in 1837. He built, he had them all designed. But the SS Great Eastern was so big then, 18,000 tons. Somebody had told him there was a place down the road called Australia, and he needed a ship big enough to load it up with coal to go to Australia. He knew it was a long way down. I suppose some of the convicts come back and told him. But when they completed it by 1857, just before he died, because he had a stroke. But they completed it. But when they tried to launch it, it was so big they had to launch it sideways that they discovered coal in Australia. So it was then used for taking the cables across to America, all these undersea cables, but still was being used because it was such a big ship. But his son, Isambard Kingdom Brunel's son, was called Isambard as well. When he was 3 years old, he was the first person to go through the Thames Tunnel, all designed by his father. There is so much. I've got to get on. Now this is, we know where this is, don't we? This is up near the end of Adriggy there, at St John Street. Look. J&F Pools. There we are. Now, this is what I said about other day, Penny. This was a school in St John Street. There was a school down there on the left, which then became the laundry. But a young gentleman set fire to the school in 1922. So then they had to move over to Phillip. over there for the time. Of course, then we know that Bedrigi, the main, what we call Bedrigi now, was built in 1923. But that then became the laundry. The Black Bridge. That was, Reverend Ockham was saying, because he was up there, this gentleman, he wanted a road from up there, and he got two arches, one big one there and one smaller one, but he wanted to, he could row through, if the tide was in, row through the big one and then go down Foundry. He wanted to do anything. But he was reckoning the roads in Ale weren't very good then in 1818. I don't think they're no better now, really. But that was completed, and that's all Scaria block. When you go and look at it, you cannot, you drill it, it'll just shatter. It's strong, you know, like super glue. It's strong, yet it's weak. I remember I took some home, didn't I, Julie? I was out walking the dog one day, and when I got interested in this here, I thought I'll take a piece up there, and I put it in my arm, carrying it out of the bag, and carrying, walk around the walk. Well, the time I got home, I had one arm 6 inches longer than the other. Because you only got to have a little small piece, and it's, well, way underweight. Paddy's Mill. Right opposite the petrol station up Copper House, a bit of rough ground. That was Paddy's Mill, because the Cornish Copper Company, like down Foundry, because they had a lot of horses, they had to have what you call a grist mill, and that would be grinding the corn to feed the horses that was coming from Cranbourne and through. The Harvest of Ale, they had theirs down by the what we call the amphitheatre, down by Phillips, down just behind the White Hart. And that one down there was 1795. That was built down there, but they knocked it down in 1939 because it was getting semi-derelict. But that was one down Foundry was a mint humbug in the early 1900s. Mint humbug. But they had to knock it down because of what was going on, the Second World War now, what was going on over there on the Cowans with electric works and ICI and the ESO, as we'll see. They didn't want the Germans using that as like a bombing run. So it was taken down for partly that reason. But Paddy's Mill, that was in 1829, and that was taken down in 1931. Of course, it used to be a little chimney here, but this wall is still here. If you look over the wall now, opposite the petrol station, you can see where the tunnel is to where the water used to feed the wheels there. You can still see that. Don't climb in it. It's too muddy. That's all Clifton Terrace over there. Here we go. Look, this is J&F Pools, 1848 to 1998. It was started by a man called Tin Man Pool. Then you've got J&F Pool. He left it to his two sons when he died. But J didn't get on with F. I don't know what was all that about. One was left the factories and one was left the machinery. Well, eventually, I don't know, but I've done a lot of research on it. I just say the one with the F. He took it over completely. We don't know much about the J, but that's why it's still called J&F Pool. There's number 1 works. Look, there's the old chapel. That's number 2 works, and that up there is Phoenix Works, is number 3 works. Now, they took over the Cornish hand-wrought copper company in 1908. And this is what they were making. This is J&F Pools. That's a bit of clever work, isn't it? I don't know how I've done that. But don't that look nice, you know? But when you look at I'm lucky you've got a catalogue. When you look at the J&F Pools, you've got the Newlyn copper, of course. But the J&F Pools, when I spoke to Brian, he said that they never marked their copper. The copper work at all. This was just another one because as we know they were doing sieves and doing all sorts of things. And especially in the war effort, the First World War, all the armaments and machinery they were doing. And then of course the Second World War. It's just I could have been here till 11 o'clock telling you all about it. Now, anybody ever been to Mare? I thought I'd seen you up there before. Especially you, Edward. Now, do you know when that was built? I'll tell you. 1825. That was built as a gentleman's residence. For the simple reason, Henry Harvey had the causeway built in 1825. And Reverend Ockham could see what's going on. He thought, well, I'll build a little place up there, do a bit of B&B or whatever. And the people then would come, because the main road used to come down by the hospital, go up St. George's Road, and go to Ngara. That was the main was A30, but that was the main road. When they built it finished it off in 1825, Harvard's had a toll there for 7 years, and they got all their money back. So that was built in 1825. Here we go, look at this. This is where Asda is. You can't see that big hole there, can you? But this is Asda, that's South Quay. There's East Quay, and over there is North Quay. That's the bridge I was telling you about, 1888. That's the new one. Of course, we talk about that because it was, and you can see it all is opened up. But if you look on near the end, if you go by Phillips and stand up here and have a nice pasty, if you go there and say, Trevor was talking about it, I might get a free one. But if you go there, on the end, before that quay was built, if you want to go there and you want to go St Ives, when at low tide, you cross there because there was no quay, over to there, and then over there. Well, ordinary people had a rite of passage to still use it. So when Henry Harvey finished that in 1817, he had to put a tunnel in the end, so people could still walk through uninjured. I think that was actually brick was blocked up in 1964. You see there, I don't know if I got that one or one, but say the East Quay was built by the Cornish Copper Company, but the biggest mistake they made, they built it on a bit of Arva's land. And Arva's let him build them, and he took him court, and he won the day. So the East Quay eventually came to Arva's of Hale. Carnsue Pool, that's that there, look. That's Carnsue, it's a nice photo really there. Carnsue was built in 1834 by Henry Harvey because they needed sluicing. Because Cornish Copper Company had sluicing gates, they would sluice the sand. You've got the problem you've got now, ships coming in. But on the North Quay, what they had to do was when a ship come in, they just let it go on the sand and then unload it, wait for the next tide and go out. And then they built the North Quay. So he built Carnsue to put sluicing gates in, you can still see there, and then he would sluice, that would push the sand then somewhere else. So it was an ongoing battle there. But oh yeah, here we go. This is another one. And remember that, the electric works. We always called it a tripod, didn't we? We're the only people in the world, a tripod got 4 sides. People say, well, how's that? I said, we can only go up to 3. Well, that was where the water was going into the electric works. And that, they started in 1810, started building it, because they had the railway infrastructure, they had the sea, they could bring in coal, they had everything they needed to build the electric works. 1910, by the end of 1911, they were producing electricity down St Ives and land and up this area. And sadly, with economics, 1976, it closed down, demolished, 1981. ICI Works, what they would call GC3. Now the Germans never knew nothing about this. That's why I say about that building down Foundry, the gristmill that they had to demolish. This here, there, that's the thing. Well, there's the cranes there, look. But this here was built in 1930. They needed an ethyl dibromide is an element from warm water. You can't get it up the North Sea. You can only get it down this way. And they needed warm water to get this element out, and they mix it all together, and it was to go in our aircraft in the second. We used to get it from France, but when we knew the Second World War was coming. So they started on the coldest winter ever in 1939. Molam started, 450 men working 80 hours a week, and in just over 12 months they were producing ethyl dibromide. You saw I showed you the Carnsue pool, didn't you? Well, this unit there needed 2 million gallons an hour of water. Well, you couldn't go on with the tide. So they there is a tunnel from Carnsue right across the quay to the electric works. So it would bring the electric works through the turbines and then in the tunnel and in through there. And that was 2 million gallons an hour. There's as it used to be, you see. You look there, look. There's nothing there. They closed that, they opened that in 1940. They closed it in 1954. They went from alkaline system. I could tell you, but you wouldn't be bought none of that. Now this is the acid. This is there. Look, it's people can remember them. They were giant extractors. That's all they were. It was more cost efficient for them, but eventually they closed down. And we go into Esso. That's right next to where Clifton Terrace. That was Esso. Now they come in there in 1923. The Steam Packet Hotel. That's right opposite, really, where the swimming pool is now. It's right opposite Steam Packet. Now that was, I'm almost certain I'm going to say is 1795, but they demolished it just before 1970. But that was put there because if you had ships coming in and it's tidal, and one ship is a bit late unloading, the other one had to pull inside of it and they couldn't go nowhere. So they'd say, look, there's rooms here that you could win, and that's where they spent their money and their other times in there. Farm industries. That's just up where Liddell's is now, as we know. The last time that was there in the 17th century, not that size, but they had a big fire there in 1850, and they rebuilt it in 1852. Now, this is an interesting little picture. You won't see this no more. There's Liddell's now, look. But see, look, you're looking right up the corner. You know what I mean? You don't see that no more, now do you? I tell a lot of people, don't I, shortly about this? Because we was always, and we've had a good life. We would always be out with father and brothers, planting plant, carrying hay, carrying straw and all. Until I joined the Air Force, I was 19. I'd never been up past that top of the hill. I didn't know what was up there. But none of us did we? None of us knew. But what the hang? Why worry about it, you know? But now, if you go right there, you're going up to Will Alfred. They had a school up there for 200 pupils. There's only 5 houses up there now. But the Will Alfred consoles, that's another talk. You've got mine shafts everywhere, but it was one of the biggest. They found a lot of silver up there as well as copper. But they say it had a school up there. So, and all the other houses were then demolished. Now, we're going left here now. Yes, the dynamite works. You're going up towards Withy, and you've got the dynamite works up there. Now, that was designed by a gentleman called Otto Goodman in 1889 until 1920. Now, they were producing nitroglycerine, very, very deadly stuff. It could not be pumped. It could only be gravity fed. And it was up, the highest point which you've got there is called Jack Straw's Hill. I assume it was called Jack Straw. But they had a blast there in 1904. Sadly killed 4 people because it was that volatile. They reckon that somebody dropped the lid down a spark and it blew the windows out in the church in St. Ives. I don't think they've ever forgiven us. But they carried on until 1920, and then the government, because it said, they produced all the cotton is what they used in the ships for all our ships in the First World War. At the dynamite works, 1,800 people worked up there. It's 364 acres up there. And of course, Otto Goodman, when you got a dynamite, you wanted sand. They put sandbags, don't they? But they needed fresh water as well. Well, they found an old mine up there, a boiling well mine it was called, an old lead mine, in the sand, and it had clear water, so they had all the water they wanted. And that's why it was built up there. Now this is my end of mine. Look. This is the North Quay. Now this is the future. Sorry. This is the building they got there now, and that's the other one. I just want to say a few things. The late Rick Pascola, I've been very fortunate. I've been over, because I got photos of the tunnel, I took photos over there and got a lot of information. And if you saw a few weeks ago, we was able to call this area there the Rick Pascola Walk. You can see the plaque over there and the walk. So I can, it's long, I can't say too much. But this is what it should look like in the future. All right? Thank you.